Can I welcome everybody to the Greater Manchester Black Asian Minority Ethnic Network webinar with the National Lottery Community Fund. We've got Cailen Kinney here from the Lottery Fund. I'm absolutely delighted he's here. This has been fairly rushed, but I'm absolutely delighted that we've got so many people joining us. We've got an hour to try and hear from the National Lottery Community Fund, and then we will try and see if we can have any questions and discussions. But what I would ask is that for everybody to put their questions in the chat box, and Owen and I'll try and pick them up, because I might not be able to see you all if you put your hands up, or if you use the raise hands, I'll try and pick it up from the participants box if I can see all of that. So most of the issue today is really, I mean, the whole need today for this webinar is really to inform you about the National Lottery Community Fund, to encourage application. So people will be aware that we've had lots of different funding for this emergency period from different funders. So this is meeting this funder in terms of the emergency period funding that they have on offer, and they are very keen that that offer goes out to as many organisations in the community as possible, and particularly picked up by the BAME sector. So we're really delighted that we're doing this. Let's just hear from Cailen, take it from there, and then I'll try and bring people in, and then hopefully give you some other wider information in terms of the sector that might be helpful. So let's kick off. Cailen, thank you very much for joining us and putting all this on at fairly short notice for us for the emergency period. Let me hand it over to you.
Yes, thank you, and thanks everyone for joining us. I'm just going to share my screen to have the presentation. So can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. My name's Cailen. I'm funding manager for the National Lottery Community Fund. I work in our Greater Manchester team. So yeah, today we're here to talk about the Coronavirus Community Support Fund. It's our funding pot, which has been sort of it's established by ourselves and government as a sort of emergency funding for organisations, and in particular we're here today speaking to you because we want to encourage as many applications as possible from organisations who need it, and in particular we want to encourage applications from BAME community groups and organisations in Greater Manchester. So yeah, we'll go through the presentation, sort of what we want to fund, who we can fund, and how to apply. A lot of the stuff is on the website, and I'll also share the presentation. So there will be bits which I'll just sort of quite quickly skip through. I am doing that because I think it's just better to try and get through it, and then have more time at the end for questions. So yeah, if there's anything which comes up during which you want a bit more information about, and I've sort of gone through a bit quickly, please just ask a question at the end, or put comments and questions in the comments, and then we can sort of deal with them at the end. So yeah, the Coronavirus Community Support Fund is a joint response to distribute government and national lottery emergency funding to organisations in England. It was launched on the 22nd of May. There is no closing date just yet, but it is a limited pot of funding, so it will close at some point. As I've said, that date hasn't been announced yet, but if you are an organisation who's looking to apply and looking for funding, I would very much encourage you to do so sort of sooner rather than later, just because you want to have the best chance of succeeding, and yeah, the money will go at some point. Sort of what we can fund, the two sort of main key things, I think it's activities supporting people and communities affected by COVID, which we'll go into, and also organisations experiencing acute financial difficulties as a result of the pandemic. We're fully aware that organisations have really struggled during this period, lost income, or sort of operating using reserves. This isn't just a fund for activity and projects, this is a fund for organisations to be able to get through this period. So if you are struggling financially, you can come to us for that. Funding is up to £100,000. It can go above that, but generally it will be under £100,000. Funding has to be spent within 6 months. That's a requirement of the government. It's emergency funding. It's for this period at the moment, and so yeah, it has to be spent within a 6-month period from when you were awarded.
Cailen, can I just say that your slides are not moving? Are they meant to?
Yes, they are. Yes, they're not moving. Okay, let me try something else.
Yep.
Is that moving?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah. Generally, we're going to be focusing on small and medium-sized charities, so under 1 million income per year. Beyond this period, this is obviously what we're currently funding. That is, we're only sort of allowing applications in the Northwest for sort of COVID-focused applications. But we, do anticipate beyond this that there will be other funding available, and there will be definitely other funding available for that sort of longer-term rebuild and recovery. We're reviewing this situation as we go, and there'll be sort of an update on the website when there is one. We are oversubscribed at the moment, so there's lots of organisations have come in. So bear in mind that it is still difficult for funding, but we still want to encourage application, in particular from communities and groups supporting the community. Has that moved?
Not. Yeah. It's on who can apply still.
Is it? You can only apply once for COVID. Does it say?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, you can only apply once for COVID emergency funding. So if you're successful, you can't reapply for more funding, and if you're unsuccessful, you can't apply again. This is sort of agreement with government, a requirement from government, and it's in order to manage the demand. So yeah, that is the situation. Unfortunately, if you are unsuccessful, that is it. So I guess part of that is trying to make sure that you've got the best possible chance, and so definitely speak to sort of CVS organisations if you've got sort of questions, if you're unclear about certain things which we are asking for. Please ask us, and don't feel like you need to just, if you don't understand things, just let us know. We want everyone to have the best chance of succeeding, so we want you to have the best opportunity. So yeah, don't be worried to ask us for some more information or any advice. Who can apply? Oh yeah, if you already have an existing grant, that doesn't affect. We would sort of generally be asking how you're already using that money and how you could sort of decide to use that money slightly differently. But yeah, if you have funding already, you can still apply for this funding. The types of organisations you can apply are there on the screen. Again, this is on the website as well. We can fund partnership applications. But this would count as the lead partner's one opportunity to apply. The delivery partners, they could apply separately, but the lead partner, that would be the one application. I don't think this is ideal, but this is the situation that we've got at the moment. So yeah, that's if you do apply as a partnership, that is your one application if you're the lead partner. Here we've got sort of our standard list of who can't apply. This is all on the website as well. It's the usual that we normally would say couldn't apply. The only difference is we can't fund schools and statutory bodies with this funding. Okay, so what we want to fund, we're prioritising 3 groups. This first one is really important. It's organisations supporting people and communities who experience disproportionate challenge and difficulty as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. As I'm sure you're all very aware, certain communities are having there's been a disproportionate impact on certain communities. And so therefore we are looking to prioritise support to those communities. That includes Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, which I think it's become increasingly aware of how disproportionate the negative impact of COVID has had. So we really support and prioritise these groups. There's other groups as well, sort of disabled people have been really badly affected, as well as older people. So yeah, and there's some other groups as well, such as people and families living in poverty and low income, and those of homeless people, and organisations supporting vulnerable children and young people. The second point, we want to support organisations funding and providing services and support for vulnerable people. Organisations providing services and support for vulnerable people where there'll be an increased demand as a result of COVID-19. So some examples include sort of food and basic essentials to those who are shielding or those who are struggling to fund and get food. Organisations working to prevent domestic abuse and violence. Organisations supporting people and their families with end-of-life care. Organisations who support people experiencing poor mental health and well-being. So these are sort of the specific issues that have risen and been exacerbated as a result of COVID-19. The final point is organisations which connect communities and support communities to work together to respond to COVID-19. This is more infrastructure support. Whilst the government funding will be used for the first 2 points, this point will be funded from our own money. I think the reason why I've had this additional point, which we're funding, is how important we view infrastructure and capacity building within the sector. We want strong CVSs and infrastructure organisations to be able to support organisations like yourselves, especially during this period where there's need for new income generation plans, for sort of new data and digital technological sort of capabilities, on sort of getting ready for transitioning towards face-to-face working, again within social distancing requirements. We know CVS is really important and we fund quite a few of them already. So yeah, as always, that support is available to you, so please utilise support from your CVS. So yeah, this is just sort of restating what I've already said, to be honest. So it's the sort of organisations that we want to support are those who are supporting these sort of target communities. There's still, no guarantees. I do want to sort of stress that this is still a sort of competitive process with a lot of organisations applying. There is sort of limited funding. And there are other priority groups, but in particular, we want to encourage applications from BAME communities and organisations that support these communities. So, yeah, and that's why we're here. Okay. So if your project works with children and people or vulnerable adults, you need to have policies in place, safeguarding policies, so just be aware of that. We are aware that COVID-19 has created some more difficulties with safeguarding, and particularly online activities and sort of new volunteers. So you just need to make sure that your policies and practices are up to date. Okay, so what can you actually spend the money on? This is all on the website. So I won't just run through each thing. I think what I will go sort of stress is that it doesn't have to be project focused. You should consider your own organisation's financial health. As I said at the start, we understand how difficult it's been for organisations, and we want your organisations to be able to survive, to be able to continue delivering such amazing work. So yeah, I think building on that, if your organisation's in a situation where during COVID-19 you've significantly depleted your reserves, you can request funding, and we will consider requests to sort of top up reserves to around a 3-month level if that's what they were at beforehand. So just be aware of that. The only thing is that we can fund PPE, but it has to be sort of minimal requirements. We can't fund large-scale PPE. We can also fund cleaning and adaptations to buildings to meet social distancing standards if you plan to return to face-to-face contact. What we can't fund, again, all on the website. It's the sort of standard stuff that we normally can't fund. So yeah, if you want to look at that, you can see that all on the website. So applying for funding, as I've said throughout the presentation, there's a lot of information on the website to look at. All applications should go through the website generally, unless you have specific communication requirements. In order to apply, you need to have contact details of 2 different people from your organisation. So that's sort of email addresses, home addresses, date of birth, telephone numbers. You also have to have some information about your organisation, such as like the legal name, the organisation address, the type of organisation it is. And then we need to ask for some information about what you're actually requesting funding for. So these are sort of standard questions, which we usually ask. I can go through these at the end if anyone wants sort of further detail questions. I think the one thing which I would raise is the first point about how your work will involve your community. Generally, the lottery has a focus on sort of people in the lead, the idea that the people who benefit from projects are actively engaged in sort of the design of those projects, potentially the delivery of those projects, and decision making within organisations. We're fully aware that that sort of consultation and stuff it's limited at the moment, and we think that you should be realistic about that. That question is more about your organisation's general approach to community engagement generally, and we don't need you to go and ask people what this project should look like and things, because we know sometimes that at this moment in time is unrealistic. If your application is eligible and fits with our priorities, we'll follow up and ask for some additional questions. So this includes how many people your organisation supports, how many volunteers you have in your organisation, how many full-time equivalent staff work for your organisation. There's a question about lived experience. So what percentage of leadership have lived experiences of the issues you're trying to address? And there's some financial information we'll need, such as proposed budget, a recent bank statement, an overview of your financial position, and a cash flow forecast for the next 6 months for applications over £50,000. So this is some of this is to do with trying to have a better understanding of your financial situation. We understand that loads of organisations are really struggling, and so it's trying to give us a bit of an up-to-date picture of that. Once you have all the information, it'll go through some panels. It'll go through the local funding team, a national panel, and then it'll have to go to a DCMS panel as well, as it's a joint funding proposal. The current waiting time is around 6 weeks. We're trying to go as fast as we can. We understand it's an emergency situation, but we are at capacity at times, and so it can take a little bit longer. But generally, we are trying to be as fast as we can. If you're successful, we will send you an offer letter, which you should send back within a week, and we will generally ask you to start within a month of that date which we've sent the offer letter on. So generally projects start within that month period, and we'll get a payment out to you as quickly as possible, and it'll normally be on the week of your start date. Funding will come in one big lump sum, unless we think it's quite high risk, but generally all of the projects will be receiving funding in one big lump sum. In regards to sort of evaluation, it's fairly light touch. We understand, again, the limitations of the situation and where people's priorities are, but we will ask a few questions at the end of that 6 months, such as how many people you reached, how many volunteers you worked with, what you did, and the difference your funding has made. Yeah, if you want to find out any more information, visit our website. You can call, we've got an advice line, which you can call. The number's on the screen there. Also, our local team, you can email us at northwestteam@tnlcommunityfund.org.uk. And what I'd say as well, I think, as I said previously, when you submit, you'll be contacted by a local funding officer who will then ask you those additional questions. If there are any things which you're unsure about, please get in contact with that local funding officer. They're a local funding officer in Greater Manchester. They'll generally be from the area which you're working in, and we want to have that sort of local touch. So if you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact them and speak to them. Yeah, that's it from me. So yeah, if there's any questions, I'm not sure.
That's great, Cailen. There are some questions coming up already. If we just get back to you taking your content off,
yeah,
then I can see everybody. Fantastic. So I know that I had a hand up from, anyway, can I just say that was an excellent presentation, Cailen. Thank you very much. And I think that that's given us really good information, and it's great to see that there's so much emergency response coming from funders. Can I just kick off, and I'll bring in other people if you want to speak? Give a hand sign or just raise your hand. I might be able to see you. Can I just kick off by asking how much was in this pot, Cailen, between yourselves and the government, and what's already been allocated, and where is that something you can share in terms of where we're at?
So the actual pot of funding across the country is £200 million. The actual money locally to be honest, is changing a little bit. So it's not like a set budget at the moment because it's changing, but we're talking between sort of in Greater Manchester, that's it. So I'll explain. My team is working on applications above £10,000. So there is an awards for all team, sort of smaller grants team, who are working on under £10,000. Ours is over £10,000. Our budget, so I know our budget a bit more for Greater Manchester is a sort of around £5 to £7 million. But that doesn't include smaller grant funding, and it doesn't include sort of larger strategic funding. The amount which has been distributed, so that's just the government funding. We have actually been distributing our own funding. I can get up our stats on what we've spent. So currently from our own funding, we've spent around £3 million. So that's separate. Of the actual government funding in the Greater Manchester, we are probably closer to sort of £1 million spent. So there's still quite a lot of funding left, but things which are allowed to go through the process.
Great, that's quite helpful. Can I just remind people to thank you. So I had somebody's had their hand up. Galaxy S8 I've got down. I don't know what their name is. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Can you hear me, Kieran?
Yes, we can, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted, obviously, I'm Abid from Oldham Green Hill. We applied for funding, and I've just read one of the slides you said once you applied for it, you can't go back into it. But we applied for it, but we didn't get any feedback. This application was good, but we had absolutely no feedback from the Northwest officer. And obviously, we were one of the keen organisations to apply for it, and unfortunately, we've been unsuccessful. What I find is with our organisation, not just ours, but a couple of other BAME organisations, we're not strongly writing the application. But however, when it comes to delivery, we have one of the best to deliver the projects. And unfortunately we've been unsuccessful. Is there any advice you can give us? But I did gain some advice from other people before we submitted the application. So is there anything we can do? Obviously, not having that feedback was not great, but they said we haven't failed anything. They said there was other projects to be funded, and that's all we got back.
So
do you take that, Cailen?
So I think in regards to the feedback, I think people do have to, we will try and give feedback if we can, but, and generally we always do give some feedback, but I assume you did get some feedback, but maybe not as specific as you'd like. There are times where we are getting lots and lots of strong projects, and there are just other projects which are slightly meet priorities a little bit better. We have to make tough decisions all the time. We're oversubscribed, so we have more applications than we can fund. So yeah, I apologise. You can arrange to have a phone call with the funding officer to sort of ask some more in-depth questions about why you're unsuccessful. So if you're sort of unsatisfied with the feedback that you've received, then I would contact the local funding officer who let you know. In regards to applications and maybe not being the strongest bid writers, we are trying to, as a fund, trying to sort of move beyond that by having sort of more local funding officers who work and have that sort of point of contact with organisations and try and speak to them over the phone and try and understand that. What I would say is we still want to have that sort of approach, and we will try and speak to you if we can, but this particular funding is so high demand that we're struggling sometimes to do that all the time. I would ask you generally say you should be speaking to your CVS in Oldham. I think that's Action Together, to try and support you. I'm not sure if you did speak to them, but to try and support you with those applications. I can't really answer on the specifics of your project, and I apologise. I think it's a massive shame if you were unsuccessful. But you know, I have to make it absolutely clear to everyone on this call: we want to encourage as many applications as possible. But if you all apply, some of you will be unsuccessful. We can't fund every single organisation, and there will be some which will be unsuccessful. So I think it's just being realistic as well.
Thank you, Cailen. There's a couple of questions in the chat box regarding whether you've announced those who've been successful so far.
I don't. I think organisations who have been successful can publicise it themselves. I'm not sure if there's been a sort of press release with every organisation that's been funded, for example. But I think there is something coming out about how much funding we've actually distributed so far. So I'll have a little look and see when that's coming out, and I can maybe share it with you.
Okay, I'm going to take 3 questions together next because I've got several people waiting. So if you just make a note, and could people keep their questions very brief if possible, please? So I've got Sunit Patel.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Cailen. Informative presentation you gave. Thank you for that. Just on slide 11, about what the funding can support. There was one part which just seemed a bit too, which seemed quite general to me, was organizational development. Can you just specify what you consider that to be? It was to do with, you had a number of other points, which was organization running costs, small refurbishments, etc. For organizational development, if you could just expand a little bit more into that, that would be great. Okay,
I'll just take another question from Freshta. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Freshta. Okay, I'll wait for that and then.
Hi. Hello, can you hear me?
Are you there? Yeah.
Yes. Hi. Yeah, I have 2 questions actually. So my organization is based in Manchester. Thank you so much, first of all, for this session, and thank you for the slides and for the seminar. We have applied 3 times this year, and all unsuccessful, unfortunately. So awards for all. We applied for some grants to do work with young people and women in our communities. They are key workers, and A lot of them suffer from mental health and other issues. And my question would be, because the application is quite a long process, and we put a very good application together, and it was very reasonable. The amount of money was first time we applied for 6,000, second time for 20,000. My question is, who is on the panel who decides about, is there any BME or Black people on the panel who decides about this? Because if there is no in-depth knowledge of the organizations who have been helping people and the front line of, supporting people, so that would be my consideration, that maybe I don't know, there is a lack of knowledge or whatsoever, because a lot of grassroots small organizations actually stepped in and helped people and helped communities in the absence of bigger multi-million-dollar organizations. So my question is, who is the panel who decides about, who is the demographic of the panel? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for that, Freshta. And I've got Miranda. Do you want to unmute, Miranda?
Sorry. Hi, everybody. I'm just, Cailen, I've just wondered, a two-part question. Is the timeline negotiable? Can it go beyond 6 months? Because we're just really worried about beyond 6 months in terms of the hardship levels we're starting to hear about and everything. The second part is sorry, I'm from Emerge, which runs Fair Share GM, and we just got this kind of capacity issue, which is what you've been describing in the criteria. But we also want to improve things and fix things that we've learned about during the COVID time, that are weaknesses and problems we've got. For example, our ability to get data in and analyze it, things like that. So I'm just wondering if this is the sort of thing that's more about capacity and strengthening, or can it also be about improvement and fixing?
Great, thank you, Miranda. So I'm going to let Cailen come in, and then I've got your memory, I've seen you. So I will bring you in. So we've got 3 questions, really good questions. One around better idea about that organisational development aspect in there. The other is around the panel representation, which is a really good question that's come up at national level for various funders, and also the timeline.
Okay, so the first question about organisational development. I guess, yeah, this sort of can encompass a lot of things. I guess it's what your organisation specifically needs, but it's about sort of building the capacity of your organisation and the resilience of your organisation. So whether that's your sort of financial resilience, whether that's through also like building resilience of the team through training, through volunteer training or staff training. I guess, yeah, building financial resilience in certain ways, through working with your CVS or other organisations to develop sort of income generation plans, that sort of thing. I think in general, organisational development can be towards improving your ability to be able to record and monitor. I think if you think that's sort of a real need right now, then you'd have to explain why that would be the case. Because this is sort of more emergency funding. But yeah, I think generally what are the weaknesses of your organisation, how can you strengthen those things? It is quite broad, and generally what we'd ask, what would be probably quite sensible is to speak to a CVS organisation to sort of see what their opinions are of the things of your organisation. So yeah, that's sort of the organisational development question. In regards to representation on panels, so I think there is some work going on at the moment. So we have a BAME network at the National Lottery, which sort of regularly meets and feeds in recommendations. And so part of that is that everything that is basically being rejected sort of early on in the process, it's seen by a member of a group which has been collated and collected on the advice of the BAME network, which have received specific sort of training, and a lot of them have lived experience. So we've got volunteers who sit on local team panels for every single region. So we've in our local team we've got 3 volunteers who have done that, and so their job is really to look at our decision making through a sort of an EDI lens, so that sort of equity, diversity and inclusion lens, and to try and ensure that we're not rejecting applications. We're sort of looking at applications through the specific context and trying to not reject applications just because, say, that they're poorly written or anything like that. So there is that is in place. The actual so that is in every local team. On the sort of national panel, I'm not sure the exact representation, but there have been measures put in place to try and make sure that that panel is has sort of representatives, but the actual sort of like specific of that I'm less sure about, but I can find out. But yeah, I think what I would say is that we're sort of fully aware that as an organisation we can be doing better. We are absolutely open to sort of feedback and challenge, and are trying to do our best to try and put measures in place to try and alleviate any situation, try and make it as representative as possible, and just to make that real focus on equality, diversity, inclusion. So yeah, we're trying our best. I think applications which are unsuccessful, it does happen, but in Greater Manchester in particular, we are supporting lots of organisations who work with a diverse range of groups.
Since the pandemic, or if I could quickly run through stuff.
Charles, is that you?
Ooh.
Sorry, Cailen, have you gone on to the third question?
I can go to the third question. So the 6 months. So what this funding is, the Coronavirus Community Support Fund. This is a government sort of collaboration with ourselves. It is just for 6 months. There's not really any sort of negotiation there. What I would say is that this isn't just the only pot of funding. We do anticipate, or there will be funding beyond this for that longer term rebuild and recovery. This is a sort of specific phase. I understand things move so quickly, so it may feel like to you actually what you need is not 6 months, it's longer term. But at the moment, the funding which is available from ourselves is that. That doesn't mean that is the only funding. So there will be funding which is currently being researched, developed to try and make sure that that next stage, that sort of longer term phase, we're looking to address those things. So yeah, I would say it's currently 6 months, but there will be additional funding for that sort of longer piece of work. The sort of improving and fixing, and I guess I'm not sure exactly what specifics that is. What I would say is that this funding is, in essence, although the emergency phase may feel like it's slightly decreasing, this is still emergency funding. This is funding for organisations who really need it right now, and so that can mean loads of different things. It's just making sure that rationale is really there for why it's needed right now, because it is 6 months funding, and it's just making sure that it's really clear the reasons why you need that funding. So yeah, we can fund a variety of different things. It's just making sure that it's really clear to us why the rationale for that.
Thank you, Cailen. I am getting quite a few comments in the chat box around the involvement of BAME on the panels, and particularly knowledge around grassroots organisations and the community. So I'll just leave that with you, because I think it's an important question you might want to take back, because I know that it's been raised at national level with other funders as well. And I'm assumed that your BAME network is an internal one for the lottery, rather than an external expertise coming into the lottery, and that internal BAME network will be not necessarily just BAME people, that it's people within the lottery who are interested in that issue and have expertise on that issue, having worked with BAME organisations. So is that correct?
The BAME network is by and large members of the BAME community who work for the lottery. The volunteers who are supposed to be looking at all of our decisions through that sort of EDI lens, they come from a variety of backgrounds, but they've all been sort of the leadership of that group is from BAME communities.
Okay, maybe we'll pick that up if you're interested with the GM BAME network in terms of how we might want to strengthen that, working with you as a lottery, I think, in terms of the community and grassroots level. So can I bring in another 2 or 3 people with their questions? If you can again be brief, stay muted, please. So I've got Steve, Madden, Memory, and then Michelle. So Steve first.
Yeah, I'm Steve from Rochdale Mind. I'm just wanting to question in, thanks for the presentation, Cailen. In the presentation, you said that there was a focus on organisations with less than $1 million annual income. I just want to check if that's a focus or if it's a strict exclusion.
Thank you. Memory?
Cailen, thank you for the brilliant presentation. I've got 2 questions and a concern. Firstly, we are in the process of applying from Olive Pathway, and when I looked at the application, the word count is quite limited to explain everything that we do as an organization. And you've mentioned that some organizations are unsuccessful and there's no opportunity to actually go back or anything like that. Would there be any opportunity for us to send more information if we need to? Secondly, you mentioned that the timescales in terms of reviewing and the decision is about 6 weeks. It's quite of a concern because we are dealing with, for example, women who are going through serious domestic abuse, you know, waiting for 6 weeks for funding, and then waiting for that funding as well to be deposited into the bank account. And it's quite a huge process. And I understand that it's COVID-19 money. And if it's meant for the immediate response, for us to respond to the needs of the women going through DV right now, waiting for another 2 months, don't you think it's a bit too long? I think, you know, there should be a review on the timescales. And I also understand that you may be limited in terms of capacity due to high demands, but I think there's organization that you need to look into, especially with those dealing with DV, and a concern being raised here that some of the organizations that are grassroots and from the BAME communities, they are not getting funding, yet we are the priority for the funding. It's quite confusing, isn't it? It's contradictory. The funding is for the BAME organizations dealing with all the key issues that we've mentioned. At the same time, some shamefully, they've not been able to get the funding. I think this needs to be looked into carefully. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Memory. And can I bring Michelle?
Yeah, thanks, Atia. Yeah, I was going to ask about the type of. You see, we do need emergency funding, but what I'm trying to understand is that this funding is for 6 months. So, of course, we need emergency funding to pay for our core costs. So, do I need to think of a project as which could support the future direction of my organisation? Because at the moment, we're, like us all, we're trying to respond to COVID. We're trying to actually, you know, communicate and connect with our service users because we've not been able to see them. So I'm just thinking about how I can use this funding, and do I need to devise a project within that?
Can I bring you in, Cailen? And those who've asked their questions, can you mute yourselves? Thanks.
Yeah, so Steve, your question about the sort of 1 million, that's a sort of focus and that's not strict. So yeah, we still are accepting applications from organisations who have a higher turnover than that, and have funded organisations with a higher turnover than that, but generally there is a sort of focus on the sort of small to medium-sized organisations. Memory, your question, I think there's a few questions. Can you provide more information Yeah, I mean, generally we'd ask you to sort of go through the website and fill in the sort of information there. If you feel like you need to send more information, when we send you, we'll get back in touch with you and ask you some additional questions about how many volunteers and some additional financial information. If at that point you want to send a email saying there's a few extra bits which we don't feel like came across or whatever, then the funding officer will be more than happy to receive that additional information. Generally, we're asking for people to be proportionate and not send loads and loads of information in. But I understand if you don't feel like you're able to articulate yourselves in that sort of limited word count, then that's fine. In regards to the sort of 6 weeks time scale, I completely understand the frustrations and how much this funding is needed right now. All I can say is that we are trying to go as fast as we can. It is complicated because it's government funding with us, and so there's had to be loads of negotiations to be able to get this funding going in the processes. And at the moment, it is just taken 6 weeks. So, like we can only apologise for that. It's taken a bit of time. I have myself said that it should be quicker, and we'll definitely pass up that sort of your complaint there, because I think it is right that we want to try and get that funding out as quickly as possible. And yeah, if there aren't, I'll push for any sort of review of timescales. At the moment, I think it's probably unlikely. But you know, as we start to, I think what we can try and do is try and bring it down a bit more as we go, as we get that sort of process becomes, because we've only been doing it for about a month or so, so hopefully it will get quicker, but I can't promise anything really there. I'm not sure if there's another point which you made, Memory.
I was a bit concerned that the funding is mainly to prioritize BAME community organizations, and we are already hearing that some of the grassroots, organizations have not been successful. So, which is worrying that, why is it that? Is it that we need that they need support? With the funding, like what you say, that we may have to go to the CVS and all that. But I think if it's intentionally for to help BAME community organization, then there should be some tailored support to ensure that that funding comes to us. And you mentioned about the BAME network that are working for Big Lottery. I think that should be an external panel rather than the internal one, even though the individuals are all from the BAME community. That needs to be an external that can critically analyze what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Memory. Thank you. So I just think a couple of comments really in terms of the fact that we are in an emergency and that we've all kind of had to find different ways of working really and being as efficient as we were before. So I think in terms of the time that it takes, including the time, it's taking the lottery and processing everything, and we all would want to have everything done properly. It is going to be, we are under challenging times, both in terms of us in supporting the communities, but also the funders in terms of processing everything in the circumstances. I think also that the questions around the BAME community, I think again might be useful at some point if the lottery is collecting to share with us the whether the fund is reaching BAME communities. So I think there will be monitoring and things being done at some point. I know that in the past, we've always struggled with many funders to reach BAME communities. I know that this point again was picked up at national level with the National Emergency Trust Fund. And lots of things have happened in there to make changes so that those can happen. So I don't know whether the lottery, also it's not necessarily a question, Cailen, for you now, but you can come back to that at some point. I've got another couple of people waiting because time's getting on, so I'll bring them in. I've got Emmanuel, and then I think, did Mark Unwer have his hand up? I don't know.
Patty, you didn't answer my question, Cailen.
Yeah, I can answer Michelle's question quickly.
Sorry, go on.
So no, you don't need to sort of tailor and make up a new project. This funding is to support organisations as well as sort of projects. So we can support you with core costs, and we can support you if you're in a situation where you can't even deliver, but you're struggling to survive. We can support you. So it's asking for what you need and the reasons why you need that. We don't want you to sort of create a project to sort of like hide behind getting that core cost funding, because I think we understand that a lot of organisations do that, and that's a problem with us as funders, not getting that sort of message across. We can fund that sort of core cost.
Great, thank you. I mean, it is about that emergency, and it is about keeping our survival going and our resilience and sustainability. It's all those points. So I don't know whether Mark, did you have your hand up? Okay.
Good morning, Athea. Good morning, Cailen. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just a quickie, to get in touch with you guys, is it via email first, or is it on the phone number?
I can answer that quickly. Yeah, go through the website. So there's an advice line if you want to speak to us just first anyway. So there is an advice line if you want to speak to part of our advice team. But in general, if you're looking to apply, you go through the website, and then from the website we'll get in contact with you.
Sorry, you said that getting in touch with your local CVS. I'm sorry to say, I've been we've set up this project since 2007. I'm in Bury. We've never had a penny from Bury. Not one single penny, Cailen. And so I've lost faith in my local organisation here. The man that's in charge, I asked to speak to them. I personally saw him once at the local mosque because he was doing his spiel there. Didn't come in. Just, I'll get in touch with you. I phoned the office twice to get in touch with him. Never ever visited. I've lost faith with them altogether. I need some help. My organisation needs help. It's Project 29. Please have a look at us, what we do. But I need to speak to somebody urgently. And so it'd be really appreciated if you could guide me which way, website or phone number.
So what I can do, if you want to give me your email address, I can put you in contact with the local officer in that area, who can have a conversation with you. Fantastic.
Mark, can I also point you to, there was a chat in the chat box, the Hanif put something in from the Ethnic Health Forum, who's offered to share his experience of putting funding applications in and feedback from there. So, I think we can help each other within the sector as well. And by all means, give us a call at GM BME Network or Manchester BME Network, and we'll try and put you in touch with somebody who may be able to assist as well. And I think, thank you for making that wider point in terms of CVSs. So I think funders need to realise that the experience of BAME communities of different sizes in terms of the support that they get from their local CVS, if there is a local CVS, is differential. And that connectivity is differential in terms of experience. So I think you need to be looking at BAME infrastructure organisations, which there are very few because they're not funded, to really be reaching the BAME community sector, because that is a big issue, I think, in terms of the reach. I can't remember if I brought Emmanuel in. Did I?
No, you haven't.
Emmanuel.
Is it Emmanuel or Emanuela?
I think it's Emanuela.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. So my question is, can you apply for this funding to organize both an activity that will benefit people who have been affected by the COVID-19 and do some development work for your organization, or you can apply only for either?
Right, I'll take that, Cailen, and I think that would be the last question I have.
Okay. No, so it's not specific only activity or only development or only organisational sort of core costs. We're asking you to sort of ask for what you need. So that can be activity plus that sort of development stuff. All I'd say with the organisation development is, yeah, again, ensuring it's something which is really needed right now and justified right now. But yeah, we can fund sort of a wide variety of things. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So we've got 5 minutes. I'm just going to round off really and say thank you to Cailen. I thought that was really, really useful, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing all that information and encouraging our sector. I think this is exactly what we need, and I would encourage everybody to contact each other, contact us, contact the National Lottery for help, and get your applications in. This is really about strengthening ourselves. It's about survival and creating that resilience and ensuring that the communities that all of you reach, very deep into the communities, do continue to get help, because if we're not there, they're not going to get that help either. And you know, those deep, invisible almost communities aren't accessing those mainstream organizations always. They come through us because of the trust and the reach we have. So please carry on. We'll try and bring on more webinars like this around specific issues, including funding, because I think this is what's needed in our sector. So thank you, Cailen, and we'll keep in touch with you, hopefully, in terms of how things are going, and if you can share those stats with us about, you know, where the funding's gone and whether we've been successful in getting funding to the BAME communities. That would be really useful, how we can fund you moving forward. Can I just take this opportunity in the last few minutes to announce some good news from the GM BAME Network. Some of you may have heard already, but Comic Relief had emergency funding out recently. We applied, and I'm delighted to say we were successful. And we heard last week I think about 10 organizations nationally have been successful with that funding. Again, that funding is for emergency relief, and over the next few months. And again, we will be looking at getting that out to the community as soon as possible. So please keep an eye out for that. So that's a funding that was successful for GM BAME Network with GMCVO together. We have been allocated about £250,000 for giving out in grants to small BAME organisations across Greater Manchester. So keep an eye out on that as well. So if you're an organisation with less than 10k, then this is for you. And we're really aiming at those small organisations that work in the community, doing some fantastic emergency level work right now to keep you going over this emergency period. So keep a lookout for that. If you haven't already, please sign up as a GMBAME member, and you will get all of that information. Look out on the website for information, and we are hoping to launch the first phase of those grants as soon as possible, certainly by the end of July, beginning of August, so that the turnaround period will be very, very fast on those. So that's happening. The other good thing is that we have GM BAME Social Enterprise Network as well, through which you can get capacity building. So if you are a social entrepreneur here, please sign up to be a member of that as well, so you can access some capacity building and training and support free from that network as well. So you really need to be connected to some of these things so that you're getting the information as soon as possible. It's wonderful to see so many people here. So make sure that you're all also signed up, and we can send you the information for the other funding that I've just mentioned.
Which network is that at here? Sorry.
Greater Manchester BAME Network.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep. So you'll get all that info from basically how you've signed up to come to this, really. If you get back to that system at GMCVO, you can get onto that database and you'll get regular information from us. So thank you very much. It's 12 o'clock and I think spot on time. I can say have a good day for the rest of your day today, and carry on supporting the communities and keeping involved with us. Have a good day. Bye.
Yeah, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.